Okay, welcome everybody. We have no reportable actions from closed session. We do have items considered in closed session for action open session. I need a motion on suspended expulsion case 025.
Move recommendation of the panel.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? President Close?
Oh, I found one.
Okay, I need a motion on suspended expulsion case 026.
Move recommendation of the panel.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? President Close?
Aye. And
Director
suspended
Sheffield?
expulsion.
Director Sheffield, aye.
Director Sheffield, sorry, missed you.
Suspended expulsion case 029.
Move recommendation of the panel.
And second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Director Anderson? President Close?
Aye. And then I need a motion on expulsion case 024.
That's panel as well. Recommendation of the panel. Move.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote.
Director Carl? Aye. Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? President Close?
Aye. And finally, expulsion case 028.
Move the recommendation of the panel.
Second.
Director Carl?
A second. I didn't hear a second. Did you hear a second?
I think there was.
Okay, good.
Director Anderson? Sheffield. Director Carl, sorry. Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? President Close?
Aye. Okay, C4 statements of abstention. Seeing none, we go to C5 adjustments to the agenda. I have two. We're going to pull E11. Yeah, we're pulling it for discussion. And we are adjusting the order of F1 and F2. F2 will go first and F1 will go second. Any others? Okay. Board member requests for information. And C7, approval of minutes of the regular board meeting held on May 23rd.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Director Anderson, second by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
I'm sorry, was that moved by Director Anderson?
Second by
Director Anderson?
Carl.
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. I feel like we're a little off tonight, and I'm going to say it's because we don't have a student board member. I think that's it. It's Luke's absence. It's throwing us off.
What did I do?
Okay.
Okay.
As I said, we're a little off tonight. Okay, that brings us to the fun part of the evening, C8 special presentation, Maria Carrillo High School Jazz Choir presentation on performing arts performing at the Fire Festival in Jeju, South Korea.
So as they come to the podium and get ready for this presentation, I am so pleased to be able to have Director Gail Bowers come forward with her students, go up with her students, while she runs are you going to run the PowerPoint down here, to talk about their experience presenting or performing in Jeju, South Korea. I mean, if you think about it, what a wonderful opportunity for our students in Santa Rosa to go across the world and be able to interact culturally with students and families and dignitaries in South Korea. I would say too, personally, South Korea is one of my favorite places to travel in Asia, between South Korea and Japan, and so living vicariously through their trip was also a wonderful thing. I do also want to note that Mrs. Bowers is just so dedicated, and it was evident in her award this year for the California State 2018 California Music Educators Association Choral Educator of the Year. So let's give her a hand. And with that, I turn it over to you, Mrs. Bowers.
Thank you. On February 27th, 18 students and 16 adults went on the trip of a lifetime to South Korea. Only a few of us knew the experiences they were about to have and the memories that would be made. This was Maria Creo's 4th visit to South Korea. The students worked diligently on their homework during the long flight. For many, this was the longest flight they had ever been on. They landed safely but exhausted on the island of Jeju after changing planes in Seoul. They were greeted by the Jeju Sister City Committee, and our journey began.
For me, one of the most striking experiences in Jeju was just how beautiful it was. Places like the Orange Museum or different museums really showcased the complexity of the culture and the history that was present on the island. I actually ended up in biology doing a project on Jeju, so it really impacted me throughout my different academic endeavors. Another thing that was really awesome about I hadn't been out of the country before, is I thought Korean culture would be far superior to our own, but it really made me appreciate not only cultures internationally, but our own culture here, because there are several differences in the amount of diversity we have here. After seeing the differences between that was just really special. The food was amazing. I myself am vegetarian, so finding ways to get around that was an adventure. Overall, it was just an amazing, beautiful, awesome experience seeing just how different, yet how similar people across the world can be.
So while we were in Jeju, we were able to perform on several occasions alongside with 2 other sister cities, a city from Japan and a city from China. The Chinese did fabulous dancing with fans and aerobatics, as you see, of people of all different ages, and they demonstrated their culture to us through a zodiac dance. And then the Japanese did a really cool taiko drum dance with lots of drums and dancing and their own live music. Now, we visited several museums, and actually one of the cool things that the children of Jeju do is they dress up in old attire and visit these old palaces, and they love to take pictures. Now, this is the Gyeongbokgung Palace, and it was really cool because it showed us the monarchical period of time where they invented the language, because originally they used Chinese, so it was a big experience for them. And then we also visited the Saodaeum Prism, which is a real horror story of what happened between Japan and Korea, and it was really eye-opening for a lot of us, and it was quite the experience.
During our stay in South Korea, we were fortunate enough to meet with both the mayors of Seoul and Jeju. And going into this trip, I had expectations based on what my brother had told me of how friendly these people were, and both these men exceeded those expectations. They were eager to teach us about their culture, and we were so eager to learn about it. We went to different museums that were set up by them. For example, the prison hall, where we learned about their history and what they went through to get where they were. They dined with us, as well as our fellow sister cities and friend cities, and they enjoyed watching us sing. And while we were at a luncheon with the mayor of Seoul, there was a meeting between South Korea and North Korea delegates going on to talk about peace treaties and to further push Americans towards peace talks with North Korea.
The actual fire festival that we went to was quite an amazing trip as well. On the first day of the fire festival, we participated in building daljeeps. Daljeeps are effectively wooden huts made with logs and planks and tied together with twine, as you see, in a little competition of sorts. It was really fun because no one explained how to build them. And a lot of the people we were building them with didn't speak English, so it was kind of a fun game to figure out how to do it. After doing that for an hour or two, we got these buffs that we're wearing in these pictures, and some of us were even lucky enough to be interviewed by Korean news channels and were featured that night. After we built these daljeeps, we walked around the festival for a while, including going to places that had jewelry, some from America, some from other places, and getting food. My favorite was these fried bean paste cakes that were just so good I had to go back. And then we walked around for a little bit more until that night we got to these big closing ceremonies each day, which had these fire dancers and traditional Korean dancers that describe their history through dance.
So performing at South Korea was definitely one of the biggest highlights of the trip. But of course, before the trip, all of us were a bit apprehensive, mainly because most of the songs that we had learned up to this point were in English. We also did learn some Korean songs, such as Here, which is Lionheart by a really popular Korean girl group. And needless to say, Korean is very hard to learn, and it's very different from English. So our pronunciation wasn't exactly the best, which is part of the reason we were all kind of nervous about performing. But even though there was this huge language barrier between us, we still reached out to our audiences, and every single performance would end with them on their feet, dancing and clapping along. And this kind of made me realize how, even though there's such this huge barrier, it is possible for music to reach so many people and to reach so many cultures, and it just kind of emphasized how music is the universal language of the world. And it was also funny seeing the mayor of Seoul, who you'd expect to be super serious, dancing around to a popular K-pop song. But overall, singing at Korea was definitely really fun, and it was a really enjoyable experience, and I can't wait for future jazz choirs to also experience it as well.
So I, along with 3 other people in our choirs, lost our houses in the fires. So being at a fire festival where they celebrate fire and how it relates to their creation story, which is all about the beauty of new beginnings that comes from the burning of the hills and the burnings of these huts that we built, it was really interesting because we'd seen it as being destructive and traumatizing in a lot of ways, but being there shed a new light on it. Because we got to see it as they did, as part of this beautiful ceremony filled with colors and joy and music and dancing. And that was just really interesting to all of us, I think, because going there, it was worrying for some of us to be able to be that close to something that had been so scary for so long. But it just shed a completely different light on it. And here you can see we're carrying the torches, which was awesome and really hot. They were really close to our heads, but it was all really safe, which was cool that they had these firemen, I guess, Korean firemen that were standing around, making sure that you stood behind certain lines and that everybody was getting out of the way as soon as things were lit so nobody got hurt. And actually one of our parents is a fireman here in Santa Rosa, so in the last video here, you can hear him talking about the differences between the fires and how safe it was.
They did a good job controlling it.
Great. Awesome job. It's just kind of got to burn out that way a little bit.
But the weather's perfect.
Oh, it is. There's hardly any wind.
The MCHS Jazz Choir and Songbirds, as well as their parents, would like to thank the school board for allowing us to take this trip, and they hope they will support us in 2 years when we are going to ask to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you for that great presentation. That looks like such an amazing trip. Evelyn, did you want to say anything about it?
it was an amazing trip, and I think it's also worth noting that we do sometimes have people from our sister city, Jeju, come to Santa Rosa, and I would like to encourage us as a community to welcome them in the way that they welcomed us.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to C9, public comment on non-agenda items. So we, just some housekeeping, we sort of compromised with the city on how we're going to handle our, the chambers here during our meetings. We did take the ropes down so that if you're coming down to be part of a staff report or an award, that you can come down any of the stairwells. But if you're going to put in a blue card, it still goes there in that basket. And it still goes there in the basket. And all the public comments and reports, other than staff reports, will still be from the upper podiums. So this is the opportunity for members to, or members of the public to address the board on things not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes. If it's a matter of personnel, please do not bring that forward, but instead talk to Assistant Superintendent Jason Lee, who has raised his hand enthusiastically like this. There you go, okay. And I have one blue card right now. It's Lindy Versina.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate Superintendent Kitamura, our board, and all of our district employees. It was a very challenging school year with the fires this year, but I'm proud of not only our graduates, but all of the kids who, just made it through their 4 years of high school. It was, high school is challenging, but with your support, we did make it through, and I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to reports. We'll start with CSEA. Is President Alfonso here? We do not see her. Santa Rosa Teachers Association, President Lyon.
Hello, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, and members of the board. I wanted, as we've been doing, SRTA has had used to be a retreat, now we call it a workshop because there are no massages. But we spent 3 days together reviewing the last year, talking about where we are now and setting some goals for the future. And I'd, in that vein, like to tell you some things that I give you sort of my take on labor management relations through the year, which is a lot more positive than negative. So with an eye towards celebrating what went well and making other things go even better. The thread of it, as I've been thinking about this, is that the times, and the vast majority of the times, when we treat each other professionally, collaboratively, caringly, things go well. Even if we disagree, things go well, and I would say maybe even better because we hashed out some of the problems. If labor and management agreed all the time, somebody's probably not doing their job. That said, here are some of the things that I thought went well. The best part of the year for labor management was the fire recovery. I've said it many times, and I'll probably say it in the future again, but the way that staff was treated by the administration and the school board during the fire recovery was phenomenal, and it matters, and it was important, and I thank you again for that. Another good thing was, we call it Teachers Teaching Teachers, or T3. It makes a good hashtag if you use T3, where the second professional development day in March, we were able to grow the menu and give teachers lots of options about how to use that day successfully, and that was a direct result of SRTA and specifically Ana Guzman and CNI, but with the support of the rest of the staff coming together and making some agreements to produce a really good day for our members. We'd like to do that more. The Pioneer Listen Up project, I've reported on that before, but looking back on it, I think it's really special is not the right word, but it's close, that it was a risk, let's say, for us to come in and say, we want to come in and do this listening tour. And both Tim and Jason agreed without hesitation. And I think that the ending results were good for all parties. We certainly learned a lot about our members. I think our members learned a lot about our union. And we learned a lot about Pioneer High School and a lot of the good stuff that's happening there. And I thought that was important. We'd like to do that again next year with a few more schools. The Budget Advisory Committee was a step in the right direction, and we're glad to hear Rick Edson say that it's going to be even better, that we're going to take that progress and continue on. We look forward to being partners in that progress. The Labor Management Collaborative also steps in the right direction. I think we have a lot of work to do, but if you take from where we started the year and to where we got, and the fact that we're still talking and working together is to be commended, and I think it's an important part of going forward. And the last good thing I'll mention is this was interesting because it doesn't sound good, but the bullet point is fact-finding. And fact-finding itself was bad, and we should avoid it. We should try to make agreements before that. I don't think it's good that we went to fact-finding, or that that's something that we should repeat. I think we should try to avoid it. However, the reason it's on my good list is because as close to strike as we got, which was closer than we had been since I've been around. Not that close, and that's not something I'm agitating for. But in terms of how close we got to it, and you can closer to strike than we did 3 years previously, and we all behaved much better. I think throughout that process, I felt like I personally and SRTA were treated with respect, with professionalism, and with care, as we were disagreeing about really hard, important stuff. So that's why I have that on my good list. On the bad side, let me say this first. I want to go forward, not backwards. I don't want to bring these up to poke anybody in the eye or to hurt anybody's feelings or to dig up old wounds or anything like that. But in terms of trying to figure out where we could work and to go better, I'll share these in that light. But we do want to go forwards, not backwards. The hardest part of the year for SRTA was the A through G decision. And again, I don't want to revisit the decision, whether it was the right or wrong decision, but on the process side, that was really hard. Many of our members felt like our concerns were ignored in a way that made it worse for students. And again, with all the other things I've listed, that was unusual. And maybe it hurt a little bit more because of that, because we were getting comfortable with being more professional and collaborative and caring. At the present, we still haven't negotiated the impacts of our working conditions. The district has made decisions to mitigate some of those impacts to our working conditions, and they've done work to provide supports for students and staff. But those decisions so far have been almost entirely made by the district office or the board and not by the teachers. And I mention that, again, with an eye towards going forward. We would like to have a seat at the table in deciding what supports are available for students and staff and how we're going to implement this policy. So I know there's a lot of things that are happening. We'd like to have, we'd like to continue to work with you to implement that well. If we had negotiated, for an example, the district has already decided, I understand, to make class sizes in math down to 25-1. That's a good idea. We don't oppose it, but if we were going to negotiate it, we would ask for that for English, science, and world languages too. Those students and those staff also need that type of support. So we're hoping going forward that we'll have those supports. In the future, like next, August, September, October, when we think that there's going to be challenges. We think it's going to be hard to implement this, and that's what we're asking our members to say is, please don't ask us to lower the rigor. Please don't ask us to lower the standards. Please don't ask us to lie to students and tell them that they're ready for college when we don't think that they are, or that they're on their way to being ready for a career when we don't think that they are. Instead, please give us the supports that we need to help every student succeed. And we would like to partner with you in making the answer to that question, what supports are available. We'd like there to be good choices that we agree on that we think will help students. Enough of that. The last bad thing I'll mention is the op-ed that I wrote in the spring regarding what I would characterize as teachers being blamed for financial problems. On one hand, I'm glad that I wrote it because I wanted to defend our members, and our members were grateful. However, I'm not happy with the way that close to home hurt members on the board and hurt members at the district office administration, and I regret that and I apologize for those hurt feelings. If I had it to do over again, I would try to do it in a way that would defend our members without hurting people I care about. Lastly, I'll say, and I think this kind of wraps it up for me, is that coming out of all the good stuff and then the A through G, which I thought was the hardest part, coming out of that, I asked Diane for a meeting to go over some of this stuff that we're talking about now. And I was grateful that she was eager to take the meeting and that she took it openly, and we had, I thought, a really valuable discussion about that. And I left that thinking that whatever went wrong last year is solvable. And that the way that we solve it is that we continue our commitment to working together in a professional, collaborative, and caring way. So that's sort of the end of last year and starting next year. That's what we do, and it's June now, but laughing about May. May's tough, and this year was tougher than most Mays, I think because we were done. You know, I think the fire was part of that and other things. So now we've had a week and a half out of the classroom, and we've had that reflection, and this feels like starting the second year of my presidency, and that's the way I'll start it, is doing my best to do the most amount of good possible for our students in our school, and doing that by working collaboratively with all the other adults as we do the most we can for kids. Thank you.
Okay, D3, Labor Management Collaborative Report. Do we have an LMC report? No report tonight. Superintendent report.
Good evening, everybody. I'll start off just saying that when Will and I met, and I appreciate him asking me to meet, Will's good list, I don't really like to call it good and bad, but the pros, I thought the things that really went well, we pretty much had the same, with the exception of maybe fact-finding for me, but the rest were pretty much the same. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate I think the willingness to move forward. We think we have to move forward, and I appreciate that you agree with that and that we're going to work towards that. Will mentioned T3, I love that acronym, that's a great hashtag, teachers teaching teachers. And this week, these last 2 weeks, this week's not quite over yet, but we've actually had 110 teachers being professionally developed by their colleagues. I think that is very, very cool. It has been in collaborative curriculum design, it has been in restorative, Best Plus, ELD, all the things necessary to continue our teachers' practices, helping them learn from each other. I'm especially excited about 17, I'm excited about all of it, but secondary CCD, that we had 17 teachers being led by Heather Rossi Garcia and Julia Cooper, and I went in to talk to them today, and the excitement they had in creating their units of study, asking me about a particular book they would like to use. So Anna, Dr. Guzman, we need to talk about this. It was music to my ears, and so I'm so appreciative of them coming and taking their time in summer, but just also sharing with me their year, and just how this was so exciting to creating the units. It was really good stuff. We also kicked off summer school. Lori Fletcher's in the room here. She's under her leadership. She has done a great job. K-8 to high school. We have multiple programs with about 1,600 students enrolled in our summer programs. I think that's awesome. We are going to be opening, I know I've mentioned this, but I'm going to keep mentioning it, our Integrated Wellness Center will open June 18th on Mondays and Wednesdays. It's at Lewis, and there's flyers up there if you need those, because there's some time frames and phone numbers if you need some additional information. I also want to remind everybody in the public about Kids Eat Free. So 10 of our campuses, 10 of our schools provide free meals for anybody up to 18 years old, and so that's up there as well. Let's spread the word. And finally, we have one more board meeting in June, and then we will not have a July board meeting on the first couple of weeks, but we'll be back on July 25th, I believe it is, or 27th, whatever that Wednesday is, on returning for board meetings. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. So after a long break, mostly on my couch, post-surgery, I'm kind of back in action. I did an interview with Health and Human Services as part of their post-fire needs assessment. And previous to that, I also did a similar one with the Community Foundation. And then this week, I will do one with the with a Berkeley PhD study through Bay Area Health Inequities Initiative. And I just say this just so that everybody knows that people who are following up and making plans and doing studies around wildfire recovery are in fact reaching out to the schools, and I think that Diane has probably participated in a lot of these efforts as well. Last week, Frank Chong and I spoke at a Kiwanis Club luncheon for their annual awards to the most improved sophomores that go to all the high schools in the area. I think 4 of the 7 awardees were from our district. I tend to believe that any award that starts with most improved is the best award you can possibly get. And so I was happy to speak there. This morning, I spoke with superintendent at the Violence Prevention Partnership about things that are going on in the summer, and also about our A through G policy. And then today around lunchtime, I spoke with Santa Rosa Metro Chamber about A through G policy, district elections, and ways for collaboration and support for the schools from our Chamber of Commerce and business community. And that's it. So board member reports. Start with Director Fong. Pass. Director Carl, no? Director Anderson? I think that everyone's made a pact for an early meeting tonight. And neither Frank or Ron are here, so we will not do CSBA and SBA, and go to the consent agenda.
Move items 1 through 10 and 11 through 17.
We need to pull 11.
I did. 1 through 10 and 12 through 17. I had it listed here. That's why I broke it up, but I didn't do the right thing. Yes, it's 1 through 10, 12 through 17. Thank you.
We're off tonight.
And second.
Okay, moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Director Carl?
And I wanted to make a comment. I didn't pull E16, but I want to commend staff for working with PBK on the Santa Rosa Farm. The proposal that we got from PBK from a fee structure standpoint at 8% is an excellent proposal, and I'd love to see more proposals on our building side that look like that. So very much appreciate the effort in that regard.
Thank you. E11. Superintendent.
Right.
No, they want to speak.
Thank you, President Close. And thank you to Catherine Howe. The piece that was, or the job description for the EL specialist, which is a position that was part of the approved EL master plan, on number 5 had an error. It said performs administrative functions. When we had met and consulted with SRTA, it was changed early to perform other EL instructional function and duties as assigned. Each of the board members have had been given a copy, and that's how we would like it to be approved.
So it's the copy that we received.
Yes.
Move approval of this?
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? President Close?
Aye. Okay, so that brings us to our F items, and we are going to start with F2, which is the public hearing. Please hold. Public hearing on the charter renewal for Cesar Chavez Language Academy. So I'll open the public hearing. We have no blue cards, and so I'll close the public hearing and move to F1.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight in your packet, you do have the charter renewal for Cesar Chavez Language Academy. Every 5 years, the charter must go through renewal. So under the leadership of Principal Rocha, they worked through their charter, which was very well written the first time by an amazing author. And so there were not a lot of changes. However, there are some new laws, and one of them is to embed the LCAP into the actual renewal. Principal Rocha did work with her stakeholders, and also the charter was vetted through myself and Stephanie Farland and John Ye, just to make sure that we covered all the bases. It's a strong charter, and their motto is, biliteracy, bicultural, by choice, and I think this is what we'll see as we move up the grades. I'll have 5th grade next year. Moving up into 8th grade is we will have pretty amazing biliterate children, so it's very exciting. It's a very strong charter, and with that, I turn it over to the board.
Do we have questions? Director Carl?
I'm going to move approval.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Nice
Approved.
job.
Thank you. Good job.
Nice job.
Okay, and F3 is public hearing for Local Control Accountability Plan Secondary District. I'll open the hearing. No blue cards, I'll close the hearing and move to F4, the public hearing on the LCAP Elementary District, opening the hearing. No blue cards, closing the hearing. And we'll go to F5, public hearing on SRCS budget for 2018-19 fiscal year, opening the hearing, closing the hearing. Which brings us to F6, an action item, second reading and approval of amended board policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements to include specialist certificate and clarification of mathematics requirement. Do we have we're on F6, yes?
We're behind. So yes, we're bringing forward, sorry.
Something is really off.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know what it is, but.
So we're bringing forward the second reading of Board Policy 6146.1 that includes the specialist certificate and classification of mathematics requirements. You did get a copy at your last meeting. This is the second reading. And so it was just to make it a little bit more, it was created to make it clearer for all about the mathematics requirements. I do have Director Fletcher here if there are any questions. So with that, I turn it back over to the board.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Director Anderson.
Will we have a specialist certificate for computer sciences like coding, robotics, networking?
It would mirror the industry sectors for CTE. So there is one.
There is.
I can't remember the exact title.
Yeah, because I remember we used to have a pathway.
Yeah, it would, all of the 6 sectors for CTE, I think there's 11 or 14.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is one skilled trades also?
It's more defined. It's more than skilled trades. Construction, technology, yeah. So.
Yes, so when we move through the process and we bring forward the committees, obviously we're bringing back that information to the board with very specifics around what this is going to look like. But this is just to add that language into board policy so we can move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Director Carl.
Can you give me a timeline as to that process for the certificate?
So we'll start the committee work next year when we return in the fall, and we'll be working that through the year. By the end of next school year, 2019, we'll be bringing forward the specifics.
Okay. Bummer.
Director Fong.
So when the committee is considering this and we're getting industry sectors and that kind of input from the community and business, are we going to be looking for different ways to deliver instruction besides just CTA, or how we integrate? I know you mentioned linked learning, but is that a focus? I think maybe my question might be, how are we going to do things differently to get different results with kids?
I think that's a great question we can pose to the group and definitely brainstorm and bring back to the board some ideas around, as we talked about even with the A through G, around scheduling, calendars, stuff like that.
So I'm really looking forward to this work and looking forward to that report and the work of the committee. I don't know if it's going to be a good idea or not. I've actually already answering the question, not to, give us updates.
Yes.
But I'm really interested in how do we support students' achievement and engagement differently than we are now, and take away some of the boxes that hinder how we learn, how we achieve, how we engage kids, how kids are engaged, what interests them. And we're talking everything should be on the table. We're talking bell schedules, we're talking school year, disciplines even, and teachers will bring this forward to us because teachers have wonderful ideas, and yet they're still living in these boxes. So I'm going to be looking for that.
Thank you.
I think that a part of the change has to come from students as well. And so students have to be a part of the development of what this path, this new way of doing things looks like. And so I know we've talked very much about that. Not only would industry be through our advisory committees, but we also need to talk to students and then just graduated students as well. And so I would encourage, we are encouraging that to be a part of the process.
Yes.
Superintendent, absolutely, we should be listening to students, but we have heard student voice for years now, if not decades, and still those students are also stymied by the barriers in our system that hold us. It's kind of like, well, we can't do that because of, and we can't change that because of. And so I'm looking to see more of, okay, what can we do, what can we design, and then make the system fit what we design. I think we're ready for that shift. Otherwise, we're going to get the same thing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the guidance.
I would say that I guess I would respectfully disagree that we've heard students, but we haven't had them be a part of the design. And I think that's what you're getting at. What student needs, and then how it is that they best gather those needs, I think is really where our exploration needs to be. So.
We will get there if we listen to our stakeholders, including our students, yes.
We will get there. I think that, yeah, we will get there.
Director Anderson.
I don't know, it occurs to me that maybe I should recap why I don't support this policy. As much as I completely agree that we should provide every opportunity for every student to realize their potential, I just feel like for our limited resources, I would rather see them go to younger, earliest possible grades and see our 8th graders all be at grade, or the majority or a lot of 8th graders be at grade level before we throw them into A through G. I have serious concerns about our financial ability to actually implement this well. I have serious concerns about implementing it well in the time frame that we've provided for ourselves. And I also am concerned about the impact on enrollment, because when I look back at the data, the time that high school enrollment was highest was during high school choices, which was a great communications campaign that voiced how varied our high schools were. And I remember having a first grader and already getting excited about high school because it talked about all the different choices that students would have, and this sort of is less about choice. So oh, and on the data point, I really hope that we will have a thorough and very transparent collection of data that goes beyond just graduated graduates, because it's really 4 years out, 6 years out that we're going to see the impacts of this. And if the data is done really well and we can all be really confident about it, you'll have the opportunity to come back and say, I told you so, and prove me wrong. And I would love that.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion. We have no more.
Move approval of the amended board policy.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson? President Close?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you for your work on this, staff. And that brings us to F7, discussion item, update and review of after-school education and safety programs, the ACES program for 18-19.
Well, hand that to me right before you guys call the motion.
No. Yeah.
Didn't get there quick enough.
You got it right when we call the motion. No, that's not, this is a little line. He said next time. This is F8. Okay, ACES program discussion item.
President Close, board members, Superintendent Kitamura. Tonight we're bringing you an overview of the ACES, which is the After School Education Safety Program. It's a state and it's a federal grant through the state, and we're giving you a little background about the program, and then in our next item we'll have a full discussion of an RFP that went out and the next selection of a vendor. And Coordinator Sarah Crank and I will go over the PowerPoint and review just the basic components of the program.
Thank you. So as he mentioned, ACES is a state and federal grant. The federal grant for Title I schools, meaning that these sites must fall within at least an 80% free and reduced lunch count, and it really helps to close that achievement gap between our lower and higher income families. That it closes by 40%, or that gap has grown by 40% in the last 30 years. This grant is approved for 3 years. And I rewrote it last year. And the feds, as long as it is approved, the federal government does give us this money to provide a no-cost after-school child care, academic intervention, safe place for our students. And it really is to serve the high concentration of economically disadvantaged students at our sites. As you can see, it really affects our behavior, academics, attendance. The ACES grant is designed to provide engaging activities and electives such as music, art, theater, et cetera, after school. And the behavior aspect for our district, we really incorporate those restorative practice fundamentals that we use throughout the day so that the students don't feel there's a vast change between their school day and the after school program. Academics are to continue those common core aligned activities, especially focusing on ELA and math. And then attendance is interesting because when an after-school program is engaging and interesting, students know they can't attend it if they miss that school day, and actual attendance during the regular school day will improve when the after-school program is engaging. The STEM, this science, technology, engineering, and math component is very important and crucial for our students as they move towards that 21st century college and career goal. That is a crucial component that the CDE feels should be a part of that after-school program. In addition to that, we are required to provide a healthy snack for a lot of these kids. This might be their last meal of the day. It's a healthy option. And then, of course, the physical activity component as well, so that our students are healthy, active, and have well-rounded academic choices. These are the basic quality standards for our after-school care program in California put out by the CDE. Active and engaged, healthy choices, safe and supportive, having a youth voice and leadership, letting the students be a part of that, skill building and diversity, access, and equity, all SRCS components. This is specific to our district, so the sites that qualify for the ACES grant at our elementary level, Brook Hill, Burbank, Lehman, Biella, Monroe, and Lincoln. And then at our middle school, our two sites are Comstock and Cook. The after-school program will look slightly different there as well, incorporating the sports after-school part of it. The students, we have approximately 90 students at each site served by this program. There are waiting lists at our elementary sites. And of course, since this is a grant from the government, it's always supplement, not supplant. We can't use these funds for anything else except the after-school program. The elementary does have to apply a full day every day, and then as I said before, middle school has a little bit more leeway. And then finally, just a breakdown of this process. As you know, the evaluation criteria of expanded standards and learning are in your packet, and really the quality assurance RFP process allows a better use of these grant funds to improve services to students and families, and that was the point of this, was to find what would serve our students best. So we brought that to you on March 28th. You approved our intent. We released it on April 17th through media, personal emails to our current ACES providers. We really tried to get the word out. The proposal due date went by. We evaluated these proposals through the panel, the evaluation panel you see there, checked references, looked at their FPM compliance, data from the past, and the panel made a unanimous choice, and we were excited to send letters informing that we were intending to award this grant to them.
Board members, do you have any questions about the ACES program in general?
Director Carr.
Thank you. You said that we have wait lists at elementary sites. Is it all sites, all 6?
All elementary sites do have a waiting list because the CDE has a specific ratio that we can't go past, and so the grant will only cover so many students. Yes.
How deep are those wait lists?
I honestly would have to check on that. I have heard that they're pretty long.
So those are kids that obviously think that they could be, or parents that think their kids could be benefited by that. So what can we do to meeting the requirements of the grant? And I assume that that's a ratio issue of students to adults that are in attendance. What, if anything, can we do to accommodate all students who want this? Especially if it has the kind of impact that we're talking about.
Yeah, we get funded on the amount of students we have. We get projected for the next coming year on how many we think we're gonna have. So we can't get changes during the school year. Let's say we were able to hire a teacher, an extra teacher, get 20 more students in. We wouldn't be able to get that till the next year's grant award process. So we have to kind of wait on, and it's obviously throughout the state of California, there's only so much money, so they divvy it up across all districts.
Okay, but if we have kids on wait lists, presumably that was something we put into the grant and we projected for this next year based on larger numbers. Did we not?
We did, and we only get the amount that we get.
Yeah.
So then the question is, since this is supplemental fund, I mean, we get grant, and to the extent that we were to augment the program, it would be supplemental funds because it would be targeted.
Yes.
Do we have any room to add to the program within our own budget of supplemental funds?
Not existing in the budget that we've presented now for next year. We'd have to begin to plan forward to that next year and look at our LCAP resources and even our title resources that we could, if we had targeted to certain students, those are valid uses of those funds if we chose to use them there.
And therein lies the rub. If in fact the program is a good program, and whenever we get grant funds, and we've talked about this for many years, and I think I took a different approach to it 6 or 7 years ago, which was we aren't going to apply for every grant that's out there. We only want to apply for grants that actually fit within the strategic plan that we have. And we're not going to kind of morph ourselves or play gymnastics to try to get money that really doesn't go to the core of things. So let's presume that this is something that does go to the core. Let's presume that it does have importance, and that we've judged that that's the case, and the accountability is such that that's the case, then it's a good program. And if we've got kids at wait list, and honestly, I don't know if I was asleep at a meeting somewhere, but that's the first time that I am aware of that as I sit here, and that may be my fault for not having been aware of it or heard something from before, but it's alarming to me. Because if this is a good program, then we ought to figure out what we might be able to do with our own supplemental funds to do that. And if we conclude that isn't something that we want to do with supplemental funds, then I go back to the program and say, well, is this really a good program? And if the answer, the answer has to be one or the other. And what I would be looking for from staff is an explanation of which way we ought to go. And I recognize relative to the supplemental funds that that those are limited, and that this might fall to the bottom of a list of projects that we're doing or programs that we're doing we think has greater impact during the regular school time, and that we don't have any more supplemental funds. That may be the answer. But it seems to me that with the kinds of things that I've heard about the program and the impact and increase in attendance, that alone to me, anything that increases attendance is good. Number one, because it means kids are in school and they're getting better, but number two, that has a budgetary impact that comes back around the next year. So I'd be interested in what is it that we might be able to do to get those wait lists down.
Superintendent, do you want to say something to that first?
Yeah, one of the things we've done in the next go-around contract is kind of the panel and the conversations we've had around it is really evaluate the outcome that those students are having. And so it's more than just a daycare program, and it really meets the elements. So we're going to really focus on that hard, and you'll see in the next item that we put some things in there. And I think the effectiveness is something we're going to build into the cycle of evaluation.
Good.
And what I wanted to add to that was that I think the reason why we went out for an RFP was what Director Mazzara, Assistant Superintendent Mazzara is speaking to somewhat, and that is, at this time, we are searching for something to have an impact greater than what we've been getting, just to be very frank. And so, which is why we did the RFP, which is why the panel selected, and you'll see the contract in the next go-around, where there is going to be what I call, and Assistant Superintendent Mazzara just said it, outcome data and not process data. I don't need to know how many, I need to know what's happening with children. And the other piece that is hugely important for us is the connection between the daytime and the after-school time. That it's huge, and especially as Director Anderson's talking about the early childhood education. This is from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, prime time to be able to connect not only academics but also the music, the technology, the robotics that we are seeing in this new contract. So this is the time to measure. Now is the time to measure, and if we are seeing that this is producing the results, then we should look at, the board should look at, we should look at reprioritizing funding into the after school program to expand it to all schools. That is something that I've heard from the schools that don't receive supplemental funds or these ACES funds, is they want after-school programs too. And so how could we prioritize for that? As long as we have a viable, productive after-school program where students are truly connected and learning things different that they would learn in the regular school day, but reinforcing what they learned in the regular school day.
And this is a discussion item only.
Any other questions or comments before we move to the action item? Director Fong.
How are the kids chosen to be in the program?
It's a combination of principal directed and based on who applies for the program. There is principal is supposed to look at the list of students and prioritize based on needs, based on academic needs. In one example going through this, students that, let's say as an example, had an SST were prioritized to make sure they get into the after-school program. And so the principals generally look at their list of students, people that have applied, and if there are less seats available, help prioritize who should be in that program.
And is that how you chose which schools got to do this as well?
Now, the schools are just chosen by the economic data, the socioeconomic data that are just presented from the 80% or higher of a socioeconomic disadvantage. So that's who's eligible to receive the funds divided up by school.
So Director Carl brought up a really good point in terms of if we find this to be good, and I understand we're measuring, which is good, then it behooves us to use it with more students and finding that kind of funding. And it's not summer, right? This is after school, starting in the fall.
Regular school year after school, yes.
So again, like a broken record, I'm saying that our hours, our time, our systems are just squeezing our kids into just little slots that when we know what's good for students and student achievement and engagement, that we are stuck in these old models. So I would keep encouraging us, fellow board members and cabinet and teachers and classified, everybody, and parents, stakeholders, to keep looking at our systems, how we support kids year-round engagement, college and career that really would fit our future. Actually, the future started a bunch of years ago. You're nodding. Okay, thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I want to say this was a difficult decision to move to an RFP process like this. But I will tell the board and the public, we're going to go to more of this with our contracts. It's been normally on the business side of things, but we also need to do it on the student and family engagement side, the curriculum instruction side. It's our due diligence, so.
Okay, so we're going to move to F8, action item, approval of service contracts between SRCS and Creative Brain Learning to provide after-school ACES program for 2018-2019.
Board members, this is an action item. This is the associated contract mentioned that came out of the RFP is evaluated by the panel. I have representatives from Creative Brain here tonight if we have any interest in hearing from the program. As I mentioned earlier, we have added some new evaluation programs through it, the most significant being that there are required elements to be coordinated with principals, at least 2 meetings of principal meetings where we'll have discussions and break that out. There are requirements about meeting with our program administrators to discuss progress and how it's going, and we're going to look at that outcome data. And ultimately, we wrote in this first year of the evaluation, a final evaluation by March 1, which will allow us to decide whether or not we want to continue. Should we go to a new RFP for the next time? We'd still have the window to do an effective RFP for next time. If we believe if everything is successful, we will create a 2-year contract to go forward, so we don't have to go through this strenuous process every year, but we have that available for the first year if we need to.
Great. Thank you. I'm just...
This is the Superintendent Mazzara, you're going to introduce.
We will. So board members, President Close, board members, and Superintendent Kitamura, we're introducing for you tonight the successful vendor, Creative Brain Learning, and their CEO. I'll have Coordinator Crank introduce everybody for us.
Yes, hi. Please welcome Eckert Sieber here tonight, and then Ralph Hernandez as well. They're here to talk to us about Creative Brain Learning.
Thank you so much, Assistant Superintendent Mazzara and Ms. Crank. Good evening, esteemed Board of Education here. Before I start, and I may be out of order, but I would like to say something. I've been here at 2 meetings with the district, and I have to say you have a wonderful staff here. They are very welcoming. I've met several principals earlier today too, and it really shows their heart is in the right place. It's all about the students, and they're committed to providing the students with the best that they can. So, and I know it comes from the top down. So I commend you on a wonderful district office, and it's really in the right place. So I'm sorry if I have to say this, but I think you need to know that from an outsider's point of view, because I do have several meetings, obviously with districts all the time, and it's not always the same.
Mr. Siebert, if you could kind of give an idea of the highlights that we found in your program, and just Director Gordon Crank, we can highlight that too.
We have been in this area of enrichment and after-school expanded learning for about 15 years. And I think at the core of what we do is, or what really sets us apart, I think, is this. We're trying to have this seamless integration between daytime school and after school. And we try to produce this by a solid, strong collaboration between daytime staff, principals, daytime teachers, and have, like it is accounted for in the contract, have these regular meetings. Today's meeting was the start of something like that. And we also are strong believers in the seamless integration of academic support and intervention and enrichment by providing opportunities for students to apply daytime or core concepts in math, English language arts to real-world project-based enrichment activities, be it robotics, be it computer coding, video game design, movie making, be it music. And really all of our after-school programs include a strong comprehensive music component, because we strongly believe that music has far-reaching effects on academic performance. It fosters if nothing else, it fosters a realization that when you stick with something, you will succeed. And it really supports the growth mindset that, you know, we may not be there yet, but practicing something 10 times, there's only one way, and that's up. And in music, we have a wonderful opportunity to experience that process of getting better through our auditory senses, through all kinds of senses, and we hear it and we feel it. We don't always have that sense of success on a multisensory level, you know, with worksheets in math, or, you know, some of the other, you know, sort of more dry applications. So we really provide that, and I think that's a really important part of academic success and academic skill building, and just you know, simple things like when we have a program, we really run it on a rotation schedule. So let's say traditionally in the elementary schools during the day, students are assigned to one teacher, but in our after-school program, they move from teacher to teacher to teacher, which really prepares them for middle school, high school, and college. So just a little thing like that already, you know, provides some college prep, and it allows us to bring in instructional staff that we can specially train on certain subjects, be it music or robotics or coding or art, rather than having one person going through the whole day with a student body and trying to do all of the above, which is a little harder to do. We do have a presentation on a thumb drive if you would like to see the presentation, or...
I think we all got access to that. Thank you. There's questions from the board, I think.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so maybe we should
definitely, sorry.
Yeah, questions.
Before we go to the board, I have a blue card. So it's LaDonna Klein.
everybody. My name is LaDonna Klein, as she already said. These are my two boys, Leland and Lyle, and they currently attend Albert F. Biela Elementary School. They've been a part of Boys and Girls Club roughly for about 3 or 4 years now. And as you can see, each of them have their awards that they've both won over those years with Boys and Girls Club, including this year, Leland received Student of the Year for academic readiness and success, which I'm very proud of. I feel at this time, I understand that there's robotics and there's technology and there's all this really neat stuff. That's what our children are already immersed in on a daily basis. A lot of these kids have iPads, Legos, kits that roam around on the ground, all these neat things. I've already seen that before. It's neat and it's enticing, but I'm concerned that once it's put in place, what looks great on paper may not be executed as well as we would like it to be. I've been pleased with the success with the Boys and Girls Club, and I do want to let you guys know as far as the waiting list, because that was a topic that came up. The first year that my boys were enrolled to go into the Boys and Girls Club, there was a waiting list. But once they were in, those parents were able to sign up ahead of time before any of the other children that might possibly want to go in for that year, and they were automatically put in. We found out 4 days before the Boys and Girls Club was to end that there was this change, so there was no opportunity for us to come to anybody with our concerns. We kind of had to wait it out until today. There was a number given, but I already kind of made my concerns known. So as far as the waiting list goes, now I'm concerned that since we haven't had opportunity to sign up for Boys and Girls Club, we will now, again, be on a waiting list. I don't have an RSP teacher, or a student, I'm sorry. I don't have children that technically struggle academically. So would my child be chosen to go into this program? Is there room for my child to go into this program? I, as a single parent, need something in place for my children to be in a safe, structured environment that builds character, leadership, loyalty, compassion, and understanding for their peers. And I feel that the Boys and Girls Club, just coming in and watching and volunteering, that's already in place. So that being said, currently with Santa Rosa City Schools holding a contract. Did I go over my time? I'm sorry.
Yes.
May I just make one more comment?
One more comment, yes.
So with the contract being in place, our students also go into the Boys and Girls Club summer camps for $50 the whole summer, which is a huge financial plus for a single parent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could I?
Board members, if there's questions, we'll answer.
Yeah. Director Fong, do you have a question?
How confident are you that you'll be able to staff these sites? You're going from 0 to 60 in the fall with Santa Rosa City Schools program.
I'm very confident that we can staff it. And if I could just address the person who made a comment, thank you for sharing that comment, and because it actually shows that you care about your children's education, and obviously congratulations to both of you students for doing so well. And this is actually an example of what we also seek. We need that. It's a collaborative effort. We do whatever we can to bring to the table, but then it is the collaboration between parents and having their input. And I completely understand your concern that, no, it doesn't all have to be so intense. I mean, we lay it out as options that are available, and we try to meet with the site staff, with the principals, and also get the input from yourself or other parents. What do you want out of the program? What do you need? We certainly want the program to serve the students with the most need, and we want the program to be as beneficial to everyone in the community and in the school and in the students. Since this is a transition from one provider to another and you have the waiting list, we will try everything we can to accommodate as many of the students as possible. And so if, I'm not sure, we're still trying to figure out how we can, maybe roll over students to have been in the program already. So if that's the case, we already have a place in the program. But I completely empathize with your concern.
Let me intervene here. We have to approve part of the thing is that we have to have an approved contract to begin work with a new organization, which is here tonight. So I would say that unless there's anything else from staff, we would have it come back to you, President Close.
Thank you. And I appreciate your input and further information on this. Do I have any other questions or comments from the board? Director Carl.
I want to follow up on Director Fong's question. She asked your confidence level. What gives you that confidence level? Do you have, you've presumably opened this up, I mean, every time you've started a new district, you've had to hire. Have you ever had an issue where it was difficult to find the people to hire?
In the past, obviously, one never has guarantees in the future. What has happened in the past was we're brought in to help districts who have had staffing issues, and since we have taken, the reins of those programs, those staffing issues have disappeared. And I tell you why we think, we can be confident about staffing the program adequately. We offer not only employment during the after-school time from 2:30 to 6 o'clock. We also offer employment for these instructors during the day because we are sort of multifaceted in one way. We have the after-school programs which run in the afternoons, but we also provide arts, music, therapy during the day. We also provide enrichment and other academic support for charter schools, home schools, also during the day. And we have partnerships with city parks and recreation departments to provide community education programs. So when somebody comes in contact with us, or there's a package that we can give them that's more attractive than, okay, I only get 15 hours. For the week. No, there's some of our teachers who make a full-time salary just being with us, starting with the after-school program, but they have private students, private tutoring on the weekends. They do community education for seniors, or we've got mommy and me classes during the day, so they're involved in those, so they have income streams through that as well. Plus, we are constantly developing and improving our curriculum items. We basically use third-party materials, but we also very often, a lot of the times, use our own curriculum items that we develop that are standards aligned, and we hire good staff to help with that process. So there's another income level for them.
It would be helpful also for it to come back to the board to let us know what the process is for selection. I, for one, if what we have in the past is if you're in the program, you get in the program the next year. If that has been the process, if that's true, it seems to me we don't change that. But I'd like to understand what we're going to do in that regard.
At a school-by-school level or a program level?
Well, if it's different on a school-by-school level, I guess I'd like to understand that too.
Yeah, okay, for sure. Okay. And to answer your question directly.
That doesn't deal with approval of the contract. It's just that's implementation, as the superintendent indicated.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And just to directly answer your question, after the March intent letter, Mr. Sieber and I did have a conversation, and I made him aware of the nuances of Sonoma County labor market. He's been here a couple of times already looking at establishing, and made it really clear some of the challenges we face as a district. And so he's well aware of that and has put his staff on it, and he has expressed confidence that they will get those programs hired.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, Director Sheffield.
Thank you for addressing the local labor market. That was one of my concerns. My understanding is this is for one-year contract at this point, and we might have some type of measurement or assessment to see how successful the program was in a year. The references that we received, maybe you can talk a little bit about the scoring process that was on the RFP. I know references were there references locally? Were there references in the Bay Area? Where were these coming from?
So the panel, we called sites in which they had served and spoke to an assistant superintendent and then another type of state and federal person like myself. Specific questions regarding FPMs, did they pass that? Were they able to be in compliance and attendance and just absolutely pleased with the program. The Los Angeles County of Education said that they invite Creative Brain Learning to actually present to everyone because they think the program is so great that they encourage others to use them. So we felt very confident hearing these positive reviews of this company.
Were there any qualitative students? Did we hear from students? I mean, I'm looking at the brochure that we had and it's showing that there's been great advancements in student performance, student outcomes. What are the kids saying?
I apologize. We did not interview any students. So that would be something to look.
Would you like me to address?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Students respond, well, I guess on the most basic level with their feet. If students do not want to be in the program, they don't like it, they will leave. And company-wide, our performance of ADA to targets is 101%. So we overreach the targets, meaning we are able to maintain the student enrollment that we promise, and we over-enroll and we exceed that.
Right, for the purposes that we would be using this for, I mean, I don't think that the students or the families have the luxury of leaving.
Oh, right, okay.
They would be locked into a program.
Right, and we do constantly do student and parent surveys. They're always part of that. And those we didn't bring any, but those are always in the 98% that parents are very satisfied. The students, and the students are very satisfied. They feel, I mean, just an example, I just heard Montebello Unified School District in LA is a district that we serve, and they had a survey of students, but it wasn't for after school, it was for day school, and they asked the students, what do you like about school? And several students, apparently, I got a text that said, I love Creative Brain because it makes me feel like I can achieve things, so although they were surveying daytime responses, students brought in the after school response. So, it is a good point. We should have brought some student interviews. If that's something you would like, we have them on. We constantly interview parents and students and have them on tape. We can send you links to those. If that probably is a good thing for you to just.
I think it would be great if you could send those links to Sarah and Steve.
Yeah,
we will provide them for the
I apologize. We didn't think we were sort of more of the hard data.
Yeah.
But you also need that soft data, that more personal response to the program. No, definitely.
Thank you. And going back to the concerns about the local labor market, and my question is, due to the local labor market and understanding of what cost of living is here in the North Bay, would we, in any circumstances, because we're trying to recruit or bring in qualified staff, would that decrease the student enrollment? Would there be an impact in any way?
No, we want to have 110 students per site. We want to take down the wait list as much as possible. The wait list is an important part still out of all of it, because we want to serve the students with the biggest need. Yes, it's a free program and everybody can have access. Not everybody necessarily needs it, so that's why the decision needs to be made as how many students can be part of it. But we have already started relationships with Sonoma State University, and in terms of workforce, yeah, and the university is excited about starting a partnership here with us, having, even moving on beyond the staffing part of having opportunities for the Department of Education students to hone their skills in an after-school program in the actual classroom, but also having sort of a synergy about college readiness and introducing students in your district to, other opportunities in four-year colleges. We also plan on the same kind of synergy and partnership with the junior college and any other educational institution. At the end of the day, I will make sure the program succeeds. It is my company, it's, it is my baby, it needs to succeed. So if it means we need to, increase the hourly wage, then, we're budgeted, we will do that. We will make sure that we will attract the people to make this happen, because I don't want this to be in any way a failure, because if it is a failure for you, it is a failure for us, and we can't have that. So it will, obviously, we also spoke about partnering up as well, that if there's some staffing that you have, staff in the day that could be available in the after school, we'll have that relationship. In the same way that if we have some staff that would be appropriate for the district to employ during the day, we will have facilitate that as well. I think we have already started a very, very good collaboration, and I think we are on the right track in terms of,
Thank you, Mr. Stephen. President Close.
Was that the rest of your questions? Okay. If you could just real quick, because I think that this would help. With respect to the RFP process, evaluation process, was student data and outcomes looked at as that part of the process? And could you describe a little bit what that process was? What were you looking at? Because the results and the score sheet were pretty darn clear between the three organizations that submitted a proposal. So Steve, if you could just do a quick, or Sarah, either quick rundown of what that process was.
Part of the process in the evaluation rubric that we use and the percentages discuss the quality and clarity of the program, how what the fidelity is to the state requirement, how creative are those programs, do they offer the healthy programs, the things we required earlier. So that's their piece. The employee qualifications, there is a fixed requirement by the state for the employees' use, their pay structure, so there's no degrading of salary schedules. So that's pretty there. And in the experience, what that was is how many programs have they had, how far reaching they were. Those are all the metrics that they scored very highly on.
And this was all evidence-based, it wasn't aspirational, they've done this.
Yeah, I mean,
part to show what they had done in the past.
Part of the strength is because the number of programs they are, it was very clear that they had established that record, the onboarding record, and on all those kind of transitional things were also very clear.
Great, well thank you, and congratulations on your across-the-board 100 score, which is pretty impressive. So this is an action item. If there are no more questions, then I entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the contract.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Anderson? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Motion carries, and that's it, yeah? That's right, we'll adjourn. The most awkward board meeting ever, perhaps.